Hey, what's up YouTube? It's your man Wes. Without further ado, let's get into these past two chapters of Kaiju number 8. Chapter 113 had me going, what is even happening before my eyes right now? Chapter 114 had me like, oh, okay, so we're just going full Jujutsu Kaiju now, I guess. So let's address the elephant in the room. Kaiju 9's fate was up in the air for me at the end of chapter 112, because honestly, Matsumoto could have gone the Sukuna route with Kaiju number 9. But nope, it's definitely the end for Kaiju 9 as we know him to be. He is officially done. Whether or not he's dead is something else to discuss. I'm talking about his role as the central villain of Kaiju number 8's manga. That particular role of his is officially done after these two chapters. So chapter 113 shows us the end of the menace that is Kaiju number 9. Isao got his lick back from the grave and put Kaiju 9 up on a platter for Kafka and Mina. And they ate, like they legit ate. 9's core gets cracked and shattered, and somewhere in the process of this happening, he finds the strength to ask Kafka to have a little chat with him. So here, I predicted the I have one last thing to tell you before I die trope, which is the exact trope that Matsumoto would use if he has intentions of continuing this manga further. Although to be fair, I have read, I believe in a Oricon post, that he did say that the current serialization is reaching its climax. So honestly, I don't know if it's going to end soon or not. I hope not. There's so many things that have to be wrapped up, and I personally think that there's more that Matsumoto can definitely do with this manga before it's finally finished. But let's get back to the chapters. Just like Kaiju 9 did in a previous chapter, he once again forces a psychic vision onto Kafka, bringing him to what we can safely assume is the Meireki era, which is during the Edo period of Japan. What's currently taking place in the manga is, in all likelihood, a blend of fiction and an actual historical event that took place in the year 1657, when the event known as the Meireki no Taika, or the Great Fire of Meireki, occurred. This tragic event destroyed approximately 70% of Edo, the capital of Japan, which is now called Tokyo in modern times. This isn't the first time a manga author blends an historical event and embellishes upon certain details in order to enrich a fictional story. Think back to the discussion that Kafka and Hoshino were having about the ancient battle located where Ryune's shrine now stands. In our non-fictional reality, the Great Fire of Meireki, which carried a death toll estimated of over 100,000 lives, was also the site of the infamous historical battle against the Daikaiju of the Meireki era in the world of Kaiju number 8. It was said that the Daikaiju of the Meireki era caused the greatest number of human lives lost in a single battle in the history of Kaiju neutralization. This vision that Kafka is bearing witness to is that era, and likely the aftermath of that horrific event, as we can tell by the many corpses of samurai littered all across the land. So we know that this was a large-scale battle against not another human faction, but clearly the Daikaiju of that era. While scanning the battlefield, Kafka glances upon a mask that seems oddly familiar to him. This is what a lot of us longtime Kaiju number 8 readers have been waiting for 2 years now. We can slowly begin to paint a picture of what happened to Kafka during his little excursion with Hoshino when they both visited Ryune's shrine. It appears as though all of the samurai that lie dead on the ground all have the exact same armor as the Phantom Samurai, a vision that Kafka witnessed at the shrine of the warriors that fell during the Great Fire of Meireki. I'm gonna quickly get my theory out of the way so we can get back to the contents of this chapter. Based on what I'm seeing so far, I do not think that the Phantom that Kafka saw at Ryune's shrine is a previous Kaiju number 8 host. I mean, they very well could be a host of Kaiju number 8, but there's nothing special about his design to indicate that this person is specifically a host of Kaiju number 8, especially since all of the other fallen warriors in Kafka's vision appear to be wearing the same exact armor. What happened at the shrine appears to be a moment in time that holds significance to Kaiju number 8, and Kafka's presence at the shrine evoked memories of the Great Fire within Kaiju 8, producing the vision of the Phantom Samurai. So the plot thickens. We'll circle back around to this topic of the Phantom Samurai later on. So a chibi version of Kaiju 9 pops up and tells Kafka that he thought his appearance in front of him was a coincidence, although keep in mind he's likely speaking with Kaiju 8 at this point and not directly to Kafka. He chalks up their reunion to a stroke of fate and asks if the site of the battleground looks familiar, to which Kafka says, "What are you even talking about?" Kaiju 9 then states that Kafka and Kaiju 8 aren't deeply linked just yet, implying that Kafka's Kaijufication will fully complete at some point, whether or not he wants it to. He then reveals his surprise that Kaiju 8 is still able to exert that much power, and that it looks like your grudge from back then was intense. This line of dialogue carries the implication that Kaiju number 8 is currently weaker than what it was previously at one point in time, and Kaiju 9 is surprised that it could still be so powerful, and then proceeds to link number 8's current strength to its mysterious grudge from back then. So Kaiju 9 knows about the type of kaiju that number 8 is, and he also had some kind of previous encounter with Kaiju 8 as well. I kind of wish we had got more backstory on that encounter, because I'm not sure if 9 will be featured much after the next chapter. So now would be the time to get that out of the way. So as I said earlier, the biggest takeaway from the exchange is that it hints that Kaiju number 8 was left severely weakened by some sort of event in the past and potentially needed a host body to protect itself while it regained its former strength, which is kind of similar to something in Chainsaw Man, but yeah. In fact, I think chapter 114 paints an even clearer picture of this, but we'll have to get back to that later on too. Kafka is justifiably irritated at Kaiju 9's constant rambling and plot hacks. He just wants him gone, and honestly, who can blame him? Then Kaiju 9 says, "Nah bruh, you got me. I'm actually cooked. It won't be long before I disappear. My hopes are crushed. You and I have fought, and you have won, Kafka Hibino." Fun fact, this is the first official time in this manga that he calls him by his name or even recognizes the man behind the monster. Kaiju 9 says that he really enjoyed the time he had watching humans surpass his expectations and learning all that he could about them. He wanted to know more, to research them and ultimately grow closer to humans in his own sick and twisted way, but ultimately he has no choice but to admit defeat. Kafka tells him to stop lying, and Kaiju 9 says, "Nah, trust me bro." Then we get the big moment where the other shoe drops. Kafka says to 9, "You are lying, because if you aren't, then just what the heck is that?" And this moment is intercut with panels of Kaiju 8 beginning to stir inside of Kafka, repeating the infamous words, "kill." Kaiju 9 says that his core being destroyed has upset his equilibrium, and he will unfortunately be reduced to a monster that's sole focus is to kill and destroy, which sounds pretty terrible for our heroes right now. Considering everyone is spread out, heavily injured and weakened, the defense force really didn't need another Daikaiju to show up, but what can you do, I guess? The hive mind that once resided within 9 begins to take over, and as Kafka realizes that this is the thing inside of Kaiju 9 that Mina was referencing, 9 introduces us to our first modern day sighting of the Daikaiju of the Meireki era. The panel after that is just Kafka getting stabbed, but honestly, he's the central protagonist of the story, so I don't think anyone was actually worried that he would die potentially. Now, thankfully, chapter 114 gave us some backstory on Kaiju 9, although not enough because, again, I wanted to see how Kaiju 8 and 9 met in the past, but maybe that's something we'll get to experience from Kaiju 8's perspective later on, maybe, who knows. So Kaiju 9 started off living life under the assumption that he was just a weak and frail kaiju with higher levels of intelligence as his only merit. Because of this, he went about his daily life avoiding contact with humans as much as possible, presumably out of fear of retaliation. One detail that's missing is exactly how long Kaiju 9 has been evading humanity at large. But we do know that because of its knowledge of the Meireki era, that he goes as far back as the early 1600s. At some point during more modern times, Kaiju 9 learns that he's basically far stronger than what he gave himself credit for, and begins to unalive a random civilian with a shotgun. He proceeds to devour the corpse and says that once he began the process of learning, it was like he was on that crack. He simply could not stop the desire to gain more and more knowledge at all costs. I wonder if Matsumoto knows that this is written as an allegory to real-life drug addiction. Kaiju 9 probably started with good intentions, but once he crossed the line and started chowing down on human brains, he got hooked on phonics. He got so hopped up on knowledge that it in fact led him down a dark road of substance abuse all the way into a cave underground where he meets the mother of all kaiju, aka he meets his plug in a dank, dark, underground crack den. Please tell me I am not the only one that notices the similarities. Matsumoto was out here showing the real consequences of substance abuse. Don't do drugs, kids. All jokes aside, I wonder if Kaiju 9's discovery of the hive mind or the Meireki Daikaiju underground is a direct reference to something he said almost 20 chapters ago about him and Kaiju number 8 being the strongest kaiju above ground. Now it's time to circle back to when I said that it appears as though Kaiju 8 needed a host body to protect itself while it recovered. If you read between the lines, it's as clear as day that this is basically what the Meireki Daikaiju, or as we in the community have decided to call it, Kaiju number 0, seems to be doing. In all likelihood, Kaiju number 0 decided to use Kaiju number 9 as its host body in order to recover itself away from prying eyes. Using Kaiju 9 as a vessel and tucking itself away, it was able to feed on the sustenance of any being 9 absorbed, whether human or kaiju. Kaiju 0 is also likely the reason why Kaiju 9 exhibits a multitude of abilities too when you think about it. So we get some panels of everyone else in the war finally realizing that Kaiju 9 must have been defeated because the supergiant Daikaiju have all stopped moving. However, little do they know that Kaiju 9 is about to pull an Ornstein and Smog. Kaiju 9 basically pooped a grenade after he died martyrdom style, and now Kaiju 0 is here. So even though Kafka's core is damaged, Kaiju number 8 takes complete control over the situation in an attempt to save itself, and attempts to swing at Kaiju 0 only for it to slice the shell of Kaiju 9 straight down the middle and reveal its form just below the skin. It's definitely giving me Aizen vibes. Bleach fans, y'all know what I'm talking about. Anyway, this thing simply looks at Kafka, and then we see these strangely drawn kanji that covers Kaiju 8's left shoulder, and then Kaiju 0 closes its eyes and... we have gone full Jujutsu Kaiju over here. Sukuna got isekai'd or something, because now we have a kaiju whose current gimmick, emphasis on the word current, seems to be using Sukuna's dismantle on any target that it sets its eyes on. So it looks at you, sets the coordinates for an instantaneous bisection attack. You see the kanji, Kaiju 0 blinks, and them's the breaks. It seems like it's pretty much Gojover for you if you get caught in the first place. So Kaiju 8 loses its left arm entirely and almost gets its body sliced in half, just like another certain character in another story. But I draw my attention to the fact that these cuts are not completely guaranteed to bisect their target. If the target is tough enough, it can defend against the attack somewhat, but that may just be due to Kaiju 8 having plot armor that keeps him safe. You can't just go killing the title character that quickly once the main baddie shows up, so, you know, I get it. So, Kaiju 8 is down, its vitals are undetectable, Mina requests an ammo drop to her location, and almost gets the Kashimo treatment. Who am I kidding? She still might get the Kashimo treatment, because after all, no matter the era, no matter how strong, in history, no one has ever escaped Kaiju 0. I love how that line comes back around to haunt Mina. Now, do I think Matsumoto will kill Mina off here? Well, it depends. We can speculate that maybe Bako can step in and tank the slash for Mina, but ultimately die in the process. There's the potential for Narumi to show up and divert Kaiju 0's attack, which I'm kind of expecting something of that sort. Then there's facing the music. Maybe the next chapter begins with a flashback of Mina's childhood, and honestly, if we start getting some more backstory for her as soon as the next chapter opens, it already isn't looking good for our girl. That's all I'll say. But I mostly think it's going to be a toss-up of either Bako's sacrifice or Narumi pulling up to flex that new eye power he gained. Heck, it may even be a merging of those two possibilities. Maybe Bako does get slashed and then Narumi joins the fray a little late. Who can say? I'm curious to know myself though, if there is a connection between Narumi's Kaiju number 1 that has eyes all over its body and Kaiju number 0 that also has eyes all over its body. I feel like something could be there. but I could also just be grasping at straws since they both use ocular abilities. And before I forget, I meant to circle back around to Kafka's mysterious phantom samurai at the shrine. I don't know if it's a previous Kaiju 8 host, but we know for sure that whoever these samurai were, they held significance to Kaiju number 8. I'm spitballing, but it's possible, and this is just a theory, that Kaiju number 8 was allied with humans in the past and was the sole reason why humanity was able to defeat Kaiju number 0 in the first place. This intense grudge Kaiju 9 speaks of being all of the human warriors that died in battle fighting alongside Kaiju number 8. Ultimately, the battle would have weakened them both, causing them to retreat and go into hiding, only for Kaiju number 8 to eventually find its own host in Kafka Hibino, and Kaiju number 0 finding its host obviously in Kaiju number 9. Kaiju 8 was searching specifically for Kafka, that much we know for sure. So maybe Kafka is a direct descendant of this particular samurai from the past. Maybe number 8 recognized the connection. There's a lot of maybes with this theory, but that's what I'm working with until shown otherwise. So those are my thoughts on these past 2 chapters of Kaiju number 8. As always, let me know what you guys think in the comments. That'll be all for now. Like the video if you enjoy this kind of content and consider subscribing for more. I'll see you wonderful people on the next video. God bless. Peace.